done? What came over me? Who am I? It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it.
At 78, Sally Field doesn't need to prove a single thing. 2 Oscars, decades of unforgettable roles, and a reputation that made her one of Hollywood's most adored legends. But behind that warm smile and the applause hides a side of Sally most people never got to see, a side that remembers every betrayal, every insult, and every co-star who pushed her too far. Now, with the wisdom that only age and experience can bring, Sally Field is finally ready to spill the truth about the 6 actors she absolutely couldn't stand. These weren't just petty disagreements. These were real, painful clashes, the kind that left scars long after the cameras stopped rolling. Think you know Hollywood? Think again. This list is about to flip that idea upside down. Let's start with the one that broke her heart, Burt Reynolds. Their relationship was headline gold, a fiery Hollywood romance that fans couldn't get enough of. Sally Field and Burt Reynolds were the ultimate power couple of the late 70s, playful, magnetic, and completely captivating on screen. Their spark and Smokey and the Bandit lit up the screen, making it feel like their chemistry was straight from a love story. But behind closed doors, things weren't as dreamy as they looked. Sally later called Burt controlling, saying he was the kind of man who thrived on being in charge and couldn't stand anyone who outshined him, even her. He'd make sly comments about her looks, mock her intelligence, and chip away at her confidence in subtle, cutting ways. In interviews, he'd flash that charming smile while tossing out what sounded like compliments. But Sally knew the sting underneath. When the cameras turned off, the silence at home was louder than any applause. In her memoir In Pieces, Sally finally stripped away the Hollywood gloss and told the truth. She revealed how Burt constantly interrupted her, cut her off mid-sentence, and tried to control every decision, both in their careers and in their private lives. He wanted her by his side, smiling but silent, as if her purpose was to make him look good, not to shine on her own. She said it felt like being treated as a prized object instead of a real partner. And it got worse. Burt's affection came and went like a switch. One moment he was tender and sweet, and the next, he'd shut her out just to make her feel small. Over time, Sally's confidence began to crumble under the weight of his manipulation. Even when she was at the peak of her fame, she said she felt invisible standing next to him. "I never felt truly seen," she admitted. "I was there, but not me, not the full me." Despite all the years they shared, Sally later confessed she was never sure who the real Burt Reynolds even was. The man everyone adored on screen wasn't the same man who came home at night. Yet Sally tried. She gave everything she had to make it work. "I wanted to love him. I did love him," she confessed, "but he hurt me." To the world, he was the charming bandit, but to Sally, he was heartbreak dressed in a smile. And sadly, Burt Reynolds was only the beginning. Next came the one she called the egomaniac, Tommy Lee Jones. When Sally signed on for Backroads, she walked onto that set full of hope. The script was gritty and raw, a real chance to dive deep into a character with layers. She was ready to collaborate, to build something honest and powerful. But instead of creative sparks, she ran straight into a wall. And that wall was named Tommy Lee Jones. From day one, Sally said his attitude was ice cold. Not just professionally distant, but personally dismissive. During rehearsals, he barely looked her way. No small talk, no exchange of ideas, not even a polite "good morning." He hit his marks, said his lines, and walked off like he couldn't care less who was standing beside him. The warmth she was known for, the emotional honesty that made her performances shine, had no match in him. He gave her nothing to work with. For Sally, it was confusing and painful. She wasn't just acting opposite a tough character. She was acting opposite a man who made her feel invisible. Co-stars are supposed to lift each other, to build chemistry. But Jones made her feel like a burden instead of a partner. Between takes, Sally would try to break through the tension. She'd ask about their characters, try to talk about scenes, even crack little jokes to lighten the mood. But Tommy wouldn't budge. He wouldn't laugh, wouldn't engage. Sometimes he wouldn't even look at her. She said it was like he saw her as someone who didn't belong there, as if she were beneath him. When Backroads finally hit theaters, critics were quick to slam the film for its lack of chemistry between the leads. But what the audience didn't know was that the chill they felt on screen was completely real. Sally later shared, "We were supposed to play two broken people learning to love, but I was playing alone." Those words said it all. While the cameras captured a cold romance, behind the scenes, it was colder than anyone ever imagined. Even though Sally stayed completely professional during filming, she later admitted the whole experience left her emotionally drained. The set wasn't just cold, it felt lonely. For someone like Sally, who thrives on real connection, that kind of distance felt like sabotage. After Backroads, she never worked with Tommy Lee Jones again, and though she never publicly dragged his name through the mud, the quiet chill in her tone whenever she mentioned him said everything. She'd learned just how freezing a film set could feel. But not every feud in her career was wrapped in silence. Some exploded right out in the open. The next storm came during Say Goodbye, Maggie Cole, when Sally faced one of the most unpredictable people she'd ever worked with, Robert Blake. Known for his intense method acting and his wild mood swings, Blake didn't just bring intensity to his characters. He brought it straight into real life, infecting every corner of the set with chaos. From day one, Sally found it impossible to build any rhythm. Blake would suddenly change lines without warning, jump off script mid-scene, and completely derail moments she'd spent hours preparing for. What he called creative freedom, she saw as complete madness. Sally accused him of undermining her in front of everyone, on camera and off. It wasn't just her who felt it either. Crew members whispered about his unpredictable temper, his shouting fits, and the way his moods flipped like a switch. One day, Blake would be calm and laser-focused. The next, he'd explode over the smallest thing, yelling at a lighting tech or storming off set because something didn't go his way. It turned the entire production into a nightmare. Sally, already juggling a demanding role, found herself trying to keep the peace just to stop the whole thing from falling apart. But even her patience couldn't save it. The tension seeped into every take until the cracks couldn't be hidden anymore. Eventually, the project completely unraveled. The film was shelved before it even made it to air, a total casualty of behind-the-scenes chaos that spun completely out of control. For most actors, that might have been just another Hollywood flop, something to move past quietly. But for Sally, it hit deeper. It wasn't just a failed film. It was another reminder of how easily toxic energy could destroy something beautiful before it ever had a chance to shine. Sally later said, "The Say Goodbye." Maggie Cole experience wasn't just disappointing, it was downright traumatic. "There are actors who act," she explained, "and there are actors who try to make everyone else small so they feel big." Blake, she said, was definitely the second kind. Those words cut deep, not out of bitterness, but from someone who had lived through real emotional exhaustion on set. What she endured wasn't about creative differences. It was about being disrespected in the name of artistic genius. When she walked away from that chaotic project, she made herself one promise: never again. Never again would she mistake chaos for creativity or tolerate anyone who used their talent as an excuse to treat others badly. But not all of Sally's battles happened under bright set lights. Some sparked during awards season, where smiles were fake and competition ran wild. Enter her next clash, the one with Shirley MacLaine, her bitter rival. The public adored them together in Steel Magnolias, calling them a dream duo. Two powerhouse actresses sharing the screen in a story about love, grief, and resilience. But behind the camera, it was a completely different story. From day one of filming, the tension between them simmered like a quiet storm. Sally threw herself into her role as Malin, the heartbroken mother, soft, real, and full of raw emotion. She wanted honesty and depth in every scene. But Shirley? She came in swinging, Crew members whispered that she treated every moment like a competition, flexing her Hollywood status, bragging about her Oscar wins, and brushing off the director's notes like they were optional. She'd even interrupt scenes to pull focus, stealing moments that weren't hers to take. Sally, ever the professional, kept her cool. She smiled, hit her marks, and gave her all, even while feeling drained by the constant power struggle. But behind that calm, she was exhausted. One particularly heavy emotional scene pushed her to her limit. It took 17 takes. Not because Sally couldn't deliver, she had her emotions perfectly tuned, but because Shirley refused to drop the sarcasm. Instead of matching Sally's grief, she'd throw in snarky one-liners, twisting moments of heartbreak into something almost mocking. For Sally, it was infuriating. All she wanted was truth and emotion, while Shirley turned pain into a punchline. The tension was so thick, even the crew could feel it. Years later, Sally never outright trashed Shirley in public, but when asked about the experience, she didn't hold back her meaning either. She simply said Shirley brought a cloud of chaos wherever she went. That one line said everything. Behind the glamour of Steel Magnolias was a silent storm that nearly tore two icons apart. Sally didn't speak about Shirley with anger. Her tone was calm, almost reflective. It wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. That clash wasn't just about two different acting styles. It was a full-on collision of egos. Shirley needed to dominate every room she walked into, while Sally only wanted to honor the story. And even after Steel Magnolias wrapped, the damage lingered. While audiences cried their eyes out over Malin's heartbreaking monologue, Sally knew the real pain had happened far from the cameras. She never forgot how sharp that sting felt. But the next actor on her list didn't just bruise her confidence, he shattered her trust. Enter the manipulator, James Woods. Their film Kiss Me Goodbye was meant to be something light, a charming romantic comedy with a touch of magic. It should have been fun, warm, and easy. But right from the start, Sally sensed something off, and that something was Woods himself. Known for his sharp wit and dark, brooding presence, James brought an energy that turned playful moments into mental chess matches. He wasn't content to just perform. He wanted to control every moment. Instead of staying true to the script, he'd dissect lines, challenge the director mid-rehearsal, and even rewrite dialogue on the spot, without warning. Every rehearsal turned into a tense standoff instead of a collaboration. For Sally, who was all about emotional honesty and teamwork, it was suffocating. She described Woods as intellectually intimidating, the kind of man who used clever words not to connect, but to dominate. He'd toss out critiques about the story, second-guess the director's vision, and, worst of all, make comments about her acting while they were filming. It turned the set into a war zone of quiet tension, where everyone walked on eggshells. But what truly shook Sally wasn't just his on-set behavior. It was what he said behind the scenes. She later revealed that Woods would make cutting little remarks in private, casually suggesting she wasn't giving enough in her performance. He told her things like, "Your heart's not really in it," during one particularly emotional day of shooting, and it broke her. Those words weren't just criticism. They felt like a deliberate strike meant to undermine her confidence. For someone as dedicated as Sally, that hit deep. She'd poured her soul into that role, and to be accused of not caring was the ultimate insult. In her eyes, it wasn't about creative tension anymore. It was manipulation disguised as mentorship. By the time filming wrapped, Sally realized the truth. Some people don't just play mind games in their roles, they live them. That experience with James Woods left Sally shaken and wary. She'd learned the hard way that charm and intellect can sometimes hide manipulation. But the next feud on her list cut even deeper, because it wasn't just professional tension, it was personal betrayal. The deceiver, Jeff Bridges. When Sally signed on for Kiss Me Goodbye's earlier drafts, she actually pushed for Bridges to join the cast. She admired his laid-back energy, his natural warmth, and his reputation as one of Hollywood's good guys. At first, everything seemed fine. He was friendly, easy to talk to, and even joked with the crew. But soon, that easygoing vibe started to fade, replaced by something sharper, colder, something that made Sally feel like she'd been duped. Behind the scenes, Bridges started to take control of the narrative. He'd quietly insert himself into conversations with the director, suggest subtle adjustments to scenes, and position himself as the creative lead, all while making it look like he was just being helpful. At first, Sally tried to ignore it, but the pattern was clear. Her input was being pushed aside, her instincts dismissed, and her spotlight quietly dimmed. Sally later said that working with him felt like being caught in a charming storm. He'd flash that famous smile one moment, then undercut her the next, not with insults, but with quiet corrections that chipped away at her confidence. He wasn't cruel in the obvious way, but his control was silent, strategic, and suffocating. There was one scene that stuck with her for years, a heartfelt, emotional moment where her character breaks down. Sally poured herself into it, ready to deliver something unforgettable. But just before cameras rolled, Jeff walked over and suggested a small change. He said, "Maybe don't cry. It'll be stronger that way." Sally hesitated, but agreed to try. The result? Her scene was stripped of the emotional weight she'd fought to build. When the film was released, critics called the moment surprisingly flat. Sally said later, "It wasn't flat when I felt it. It became flat when someone else decided it should be." That moment became symbolic for her, a reminder of how easily creative power can be taken away, even by someone who seems supportive. She never called out Bridges by name in early interviews, but when asked about her toughest co-stars, she once said, "Some people steal scenes, others steal your trust." And everyone in Hollywood knew exactly who she meant. After that film, Sally vowed to protect her creative space no matter what. She wasn't just an actress anymore. She was a survivor of Hollywood's mind games. Every smile, every friendly suggestion, she learned to read between the lines. By this point in her career, Sally Field wasn't just performing. She was fighting for her truth in a town built on pretending. Just when Sally thought she'd seen it all, another storm hit, one that would test her patience like never before. The next name on her list? The provocateur, Robin Williams. On paper, their pairing in Mrs. Doubtfire seemed like a dream. Two powerhouse performers, one comedy legend and one dramatic icon, joining forces to make movie magic. But while the world adored the film's heart and humor, Sally later admitted that filming it was one of the most emotionally draining experiences of her entire career. Robin was a whirlwind, unstoppable, unpredictable, and always on. His mind moved faster than anyone else's, and his constant improvisations kept the set buzzing. The audience saw comedy brilliance, but for Sally, it was chaos in disguise. She came prepared, knowing every line, every emotional beat. But Robin? He'd rewrite entire scenes mid-performance, tossing in jokes, voices, and wild energy that threw everyone off balance. Sally said working with him was like trying to cry while someone set off fireworks next to you. At first, she tried to roll with it, laughing along, matching his pace. But it soon became exhausting. Every serious scene turned into a circus, every quiet moment hijacked by humor. Sally respected Robin's genius, but she also felt her own craft was being overshadowed. "He didn't need a co-star," she once said quietly. "He needed an audience." That line said it all. Behind the camera, tensions began to bubble. Sally wanted emotional truth, while Robin was chasing laughs. The director tried to find a balance, but the clash of energies was impossible to ignore. Crew members recalled moments where Sally would walk off set, needing a break to regroup after yet another scene went off script. One assistant even said, "You could tell she loved him, but she was tired of surviving his storm." Still, Sally never badmouthed Robin. Her comments years later came from a place of love and exhaustion. She described him as a beautiful chaos, someone whose brilliance came with a cost. He was like lightning, she said. You couldn't catch him, you just had to survive the strike. Despite the strain, she admitted that Robin's heart was pure, but his energy could swallow everyone around him. By the end of Mrs. Doubtfire, Sally was emotionally spent. The world saw a funny, heartwarming classic, but for her, it was a lesson in balance. It taught her that even the kindest souls can be overwhelming when their brilliance burns too bright, and though she carried deep respect for Robin, she also carried a quiet truth. Sometimes, even the brightest light can cast the longest shadow. By this point, Sally Field had weathered every kind of storm Hollywood could throw at her, from controlling partners to manipulative co-stars to chaotic geniuses. But the next name on her list wasn't just another clash, it was a full-on betrayal that struck her to the core. The final one, the backstabber, Daniel Day-Lewis. When Sally signed on to play Mary Todd Lincoln in Lincoln, she was thrilled. This was a dream project, a Steven Spielberg film, a powerful script, and the chance to work alongside one of the most respected actors alive. Everyone told her Daniel was a method actor, someone who lived as his character every moment of filming. She was prepared for intensity, but nothing could have prepared her for him. From the moment filming began, Daniel refused to break character. He didn't speak to her as Daniel, he spoke as Abraham Lincoln, formal, distant, and sometimes ice-cold. At first, Sally found it fascinating, but soon it turned isolating. She said it felt like he was performing emotional surgery, cutting into scenes so deeply that everyone else disappeared. He demanded silence between takes, avoided eye contact, and refused to interact unless the cameras were rolling. Sally respected his process. She really did. But it started to feel less like dedication and more like domination. While she was pouring her soul into Mary's heartbreak, Daniel's intense energy began to consume every inch of space on set. One crew member recalled, "You could feel the tension. It was like watching two powerful forces collide, but only one was allowed to win." During one crucial scene, Mary confronting Lincoln in anger, Sally gave everything she had. Her voice cracked, tears streamed, her body shook. The crew was moved. But when the take ended, Daniel didn't even look at her. He simply nodded, turned away, and muttered, "We'll do another." That single moment broke her heart. "It wasn't Lincoln talking," she later said. "It was Daniel not seeing me at all." Despite the emotional distance, the film became a masterpiece, and both their performances were praised to the skies. But behind the glory, Sally carried a quiet ache. She'd respected him, admired him, even defended his methods, but deep down, she knew what it had cost her. "He was brilliant," she admitted, "but he made me feel invisible." For Sally Field, Lincoln was a triumph on screen and a trial behind it. It became the perfect symbol of her Hollywood journey. Brilliance mixed with heartbreak, respect tangled with pain. She'd faced control, chaos, and ego, but through it all, she stayed true to herself, raw, honest, and real. Even when others tried to dim her light, Sally Field kept shining, and she did it her way. After everything Sally Field had endured, the heartbreaks, the clashes, the manipulation, you'd think Hollywood had nothing left to throw at her. But one more storm was waiting, the final name on her list, the pretender, Pierce Brosnan. When Sally agreed to join Mrs. Doubtfire, Pierce came in as the charming love interest, the smooth, composed bachelor meant to balance out Robin Williams' wildness. On screen, he was the picture of calm confidence. But off-screen, Sally soon realized that calm came with a sharp edge. At first, everything seemed fine. Pierce was polished, funny, and impossibly polite. He called everyone darling, made the crew laugh, and seemed like a true gentleman. But behind that flawless smile, Sally sensed something different. A quiet arrogance that made collaboration nearly impossible. He carried himself like the star of every room, and it didn't take long before that confidence started turning into quiet competition. Pierce had a way of making every scene about him. If the camera wasn't on him, he'd shift his tone, his movement, even his timing, anything to pull the focus back. Sally, a master of subtlety and emotion, found herself constantly adjusting just to keep the balance. Crew members later joked that you could feel the ego tension in the air. But for Sally, it wasn't a joke. It was exhausting. One day during a heated scene, Sally tried to ground the performance, to make it real and heartfelt. But Pierce broke character mid-take, smirking as if the whole thing was a rehearsal. "Relax, darling, it's just a movie," he said. And Sally never forgot those words. To her, it wasn't just dismissive. It was disrespectful. For someone who lived and breathed authenticity, that kind of attitude cut deep. Still, she didn't lash out. She stayed composed, delivered her lines, and carried the emotional weight of the movie with her usual grace. But privately, she admitted the experience left her frustrated. "There are actors who listen," she once said, "and actors who wait for their turn to speak." Everyone who'd worked on Mrs. Doubtfire knew exactly who she was talking about. Despite the tension, the film became a huge success, beloved by audiences around the world. And in true Sally fashion, she never spoke harshly about Pierce in public. But in later interviews, when asked about her more challenging co-stars, she gave a knowing smile and said, "Some people play charm like a role, even when the cameras aren't rolling." That quiet line said it all. Sally had faced controlling men, chaotic energy, and arrogant performers. Yet she never lost her integrity. Through every feud and every fake smile, she held her head high and kept delivering truth on screen. Hollywood tested her, but Sally Field never broke. She just kept getting stronger, sharper, and more unstoppable with every battle she survived. He wasn't pushing her to grow. He was trying to make her shrink. Every sly comment, every correction, every suggestion from him wasn't about improvement. It was about control. For Sally, who had spent decades earning her place in a male-dominated industry, that kind of treatment hit hard. It wasn't just frustrating. It was insulting. Later, she described the experience not as a creative challenge, but as a psychological minefield. "It wasn't the role that wore me down," she said. "It was having to constantly defend my worth." When that project wrapped, Sally didn't just walk away tired, she walked away changed. She made herself a promise right then and there. Never again would she let any man silence her or confuse arrogance with brilliance. And just when she thought she'd seen it all, one last name stood out on her list, and it shocked everyone who heard it. The unexpected villain, Dustin Hoffman. To the public, Hoffman was a Hollywood god, a perfectionist, an icon, an actor who'd earned Oscars, respect, and global admiration. But to Sally Field, he wasn't a mentor or collaborator. He was a letdown she'd never forget. They never ended up making a movie together, but their paths nearly crossed in the early 1980s, during the casting process for a project that was hyped but never actually made it to screen. For Sally, that audition was supposed to be a new door opening, but it turned into one of the most degrading moments of her entire career. From the second she stepped into the room, she knew something was off. Hoffman had already taken control, laughing with the producers, tossing jokes around, and acting like he owned the place. By the time Sally began her reading, the energy was all wrong. Instead of listening, he interrupted, again and again, correcting her tone, questioning her choices, and dissecting her performance in front of everyone. It wasn't guidance, it was humiliation. Sally later said, "It felt like auditioning for a man who'd already decided you weren't enough." That moment stripped away her confidence, leaving her feeling like a nervous beginner instead of a two-time Emmy winner and seasoned actress. The room didn't see Sally Field, the powerhouse. They saw the version Hoffman wanted them to see, someone small. The sting only deepened days later when word spread about what he'd said afterward. Through a mutual friend, Sally heard that Hoffman had bragged about what he'd done, that he'd made sure the chemistry between them didn't work. He told people the connection wasn't there, and that he'd made it that way on purpose. To Sally, that wasn't just disrespectful. It was cruelty dressed as confidence. For weeks after, she couldn't shake it. She replayed the moment in her head, wondering if she'd done something wrong, if maybe she hadn't been strong enough, sharp enough. But as time passed, clarity replaced self-doubt. The problem hadn't been her performance. It had been his ego. Hoffman hadn't wanted a partner. He wanted to prove he was the smartest, the most dominant man in the room, even if it meant cutting someone else down to do it. Sally later called it one of the most humiliating moments of my career. But from that humiliation came something powerful: resolve. She made another vow to herself: no more working with men who mistake arrogance for genius, and she meant it. From that day forward, Sally Field carried herself differently, stronger, sharper, and absolutely unshakable. Hollywood could try to dim her light, but Sally learned one thing for sure: she didn't need anyone's approval to shine, and there you have it. The truth behind Hollywood's golden sweetheart, Sally Field. From heartbreak to betrayal, from chaos to control, she's faced it all and still walked away shining brighter than ever. Every feud, every clash, every bruise only made her tougher, wiser, and more unstoppable. Sally's story isn't just about Hollywood drama. It's about power, resilience, and knowing your worth, no matter who tries to take it from you. She proved that staying true to yourself will always outshine arrogance, ego, and fake charm. So, what do you think? Did these revelations change how you see Hollywood's biggest stars? Who do you think was the hardest for Sally to forgive? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you think. And hey, if you loved this deep dive into the scandals behind the stars, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next Hollywood bombshell. Big stories, big drama, and we've got plenty more coming.